Welcome to the With Pride and Grit podcast, a show dedicated to helping you navigate a season of transition in your life. I'm your host, Jen Pasquale, and as a 16-year military spouse, I know firsthand how challenging life's transitions can be. I also know it's an opportunity for growth, discovery, and new beginnings. In this season of With Pride and Grit, we're sharing stories of military spouses who are or have successfully transitioned to civilian life. We'll also hear from experts who can offer valuable insights about transition resources available to support a spouse's journey. Whether you're just starting the transition process or already well on your way, this podcast is for you. We hope to provide you with the knowledge and inspiration to make the most of this new chapter in your life. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of With Pride and Grit. Today, I'm excited to talk to Tracy Steele and help you all learn a little bit more about both hiring our heroes and specifically fellowship programs. It's always been something I've been interested about. So if that is something you are interested about, you are in the right place. So Tracy, welcome to the podcast and thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having me, Jen. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I know you work for Hiring Our Heroes, and we're going to get into all the amazing things that they offer spouses. But I'd love for you to start by just kind of introducing us to you and kind of what your journey has looked like. As you know, this is a transition space, so we'd love for you to kind of include a little bit about that journey and what that's looked like for you and your family.
Yes, absolutely. So I am a military spouse of married 20 years, been with my husband for 23. I'm now a veteran spouse, so I have crossed over to the other side on the transition space. I started that journey with him as a registered nurse. I had my own career aspirations, my own network. I had no intent of being a military spouse, but we know how that goes, right? So within that first year of marriage, we had our first child and we endured our first PCS cross country to Quantico, Virginia. So really quickly, in order to survive, I had to be a military spouse. So fortunately made some of my best friends in that next duty station, and we're still friends to this day, do annual trips together. But came back about 4 years later to California, got my nursing job back. Life was good. I was going to be, back in my career aspirations. But then again, in 2011, my husband's career started taking off. We started moving every 1 to 2 years. And so that's actually the last time I worked as a registered nurse. So I have a 9-year pay gap on my resume. And I call it a pay gap, though, because I wasn't not working. I just wasn't getting paid. So I chose to volunteer alongside him, and really get involved in his network. So I was family readiness, advisors, assistants, command teams. I started getting really involved with different military spouse clubs, the schools, any nonprofit organizations within all the different local communities where we lived. So all volunteer experience. I started getting a little bit more strategic with the roles I took on more senior leadership roles. I was the president of a grant funding organization when we lived over in Okinawa, Japan, and really got involved with that local community. Started getting really frustrated with all the really high level work that I was doing, along with a lot of other really competitive, professional spouses. And I just felt like we weren't getting credit for that work we were doing. So I wanted to get good at writing it into a resume and using that as professional experience. So eventually got good at writing that all down, ended up getting recruited for a nonprofit management job, helping underrepresented students in LA get their foot in the door in Hollywood. I did all the resume writing, career coaching, all that stuff to get them ready to go. And that was all solely from my volunteer experience. Had nothing to do with my nursing experience. So love that job but then I ultimately wanted to get back to my love, the community that I served in the military community, and specifically military spouses, because it was so near and dear to my heart. So I had my, eyes set on getting into Hiring Our Heroes, but I needed to get that experience really underneath my belt. So did some of my own professional development. I'm a certified professional resume writer now. I did some of my own career coaching on the side and really just tried to get competitive in order to get here. So I've been with Hiring Our Heroes for a year and a half. And for me, really, I've landed my dream job. I get to meet military spouses like you, Jen, like anybody that has lived similar lifestyles, and be able to hear, their challenges, what they've done over the course of their, whether it be a year as a military spouse or 30 years as a military spouse. And then I get to play a little piece in their puzzle and getting their foot in the door, for their dream jobs.
I appreciate you sharing kind of a little bit about your history. And I love a couple of things you said. One, I think that pay gap language is such an important distinction that I don't really, and maybe it's that I'm not in the space you're in, but I feel like I don't hear that a lot. The differentiation of a pay gap versus, a, a skill gap. Like our skills may be still increasing and our experience may be still increasing, but maybe that pay wasn't there. So it really is not, it's not a complete gap. It's just a pay gap. I think that's a really important thing for folks to remember and hear. And I love that you were able to kind of figure out what you wanted to do and find that passion and then dig in and and figure out how to get to that dream spot. So I love that you're there now. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So a lot of folks know about hiring our heroes, but one of the reasons I was particularly interested in having you come on is you and I had some offline conversations about the work that you were doing in the fellowship program. And I was really interested in kind of what that looks like and who that's really for. And so that was initially the focus. I think we're going to get to some other things too, but I would love to start with the fellowship piece, which I know is just a slice of what Hiring Our Heroes has. But if you could kind of paint us a picture for the work that you do in that fellowship program and kind of what is that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to kind of bring it back to basics, Hiring Our Heroes is one of the main initiatives of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So, our sole mission is to provide employment support for the military connected job seekers. I think people think that it's mainly for transitioning service members, but there's a ton of support for military spouses. And kind of our motto is once a military spouse, always a military spouse. So we have resources and fellowships for everybody. So specifically with the fellowship program that I'm a part of, so I'm a program manager based in San Diego for the military spouse fellowships. So we have two pipelines of fellowships within our program. So there's one that is for associate's degree or higher. And actually in that program, we find about 46% of our spouses actually have advanced degrees. And then we now have a newly launched fellowship for skills based. So that is for, does not have a college degree requirement. Some people may have a college degree and maybe they're making a complete career pivot and they're really needing to get their foot in the door somewhere to get additional training in a new career, trajectory. But so for the fellowships, so we have fellowships for all spouses, like I said. So any active duty service members and spouses of active duty service members, including National Guard and reserves, they are actually eligible for the Department of Defense's Military Spouse Career Accelerator Pilot. So that is supported by Hiring Our Heroes in combination with Deloitte. And so that's a 12-week fellowship program. It's for career ready spouses. So they have a focus of where they're wanting to go and they're needing to have a little bit of help to get their foot in the door with somebody. So kind of the structure of the fellowship is that first week is with Hiring Our Heroes. We get all of our fellows ready to go, take them through orientation, make sure they have all the resources ready to have a successful experience. And then the next 11 weeks are with that host company. So Monday through Thursday, they work with the host company 8 hours a day. The stipend that they receive right now is $18 an hour. So it is a paid fellowship while they are learning. On Fridays, we bring them back with us and we do professional development, usually for about a couple hours. And we bring in host companies to teach us different classes on salary negotiation. So, at the end of their fellowship, they're going to be ready to negotiate a really competitive salary for that job that they've been doing. We talk about networking, their personal brand, their LinkedIn. So they're really going to be professional by the end of the fellowship. So that is the active duty side goes to the Department of Defense. And so all other spouses are supported through Hiring Our Heroes through that same structure. So our sponsorship and donor money will fund all of the veterans, separated, divorced spouses. We also help support caregivers. So any caregiver of wounded warriors, and it doesn't have to be a spouse. We have fellowship support for them as well, including Gold Star spouses. So again, once a spouse, always a spouse. We have fellowship support.
I love how just kind of from an audience perspective, how wide a net that is that you all are able to have for this opportunity. It's really incredible. I didn't realize that. You mentioned career ready. So when you say career ready, if someone's not really sure what that means, you mentioned like they know what they want. So is this you ideally someone who's applying for a fellowship is already has a job in mind or a company in mind?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the fellowship is right for spouses who have an idea. We ask them for 2 to 4 positions of interest that they're going for. So they need to have then a professional resume that supports that they are a good fit for those 2 to 4 positions of interest. They can be a little bit more narrow. They might have like 1 or 2, dream jobs that they're going for, but their professional resume needs to support that they're a good fit. And to be competitive for that, it doesn't mean you need to have 10 years experience being, marketing manager. That's not the point of the fellowship. But what it is that you need to have maybe education or some type of professional development that's supportive of that. Or all through volunteer experience, like myself, I had no formal training, and a lot of the stuff I did with nonprofit, I just started learning on the go. And so I was able to articulate that on a professional resume. And so many of the spouses are like that as well. They're able to make these career pivots, and they have the right verbiage on their resume that supports those 2 to 4 positions of interest. The spouses who are not focused and they don't know, a lot of times they'll meet applicants and like, I could do anything. I've done this, I've done that. I just don't know, just get me a job. I'm open-minded to anything. So with those spouses, I'm going to send them and give them some homework to help them figure out exactly what their focus will be. I think anybody who's a job seeker will know you're going to be more successful the more focused you are, because you get that eye on your prize, on the prize, and you're trying to go for it. So that works well with the fellowship program as well.
Okay. So I'm curious, you mentioned, so they've got 2 to 4 roles, but they don't necessarily have an organization in mind. That's part of what you all do is pair them with those organizations, correct?
Yes. So I think it's over 1,100 companies have access to our resumes monthly. We send out resumes once a month. We're always trying to match our spouses with different host companies. But every day we're bringing on new companies to our list. So, and really any of our spouses can bring a company to us. So as our spouses are, hopefully being active job seekers, and maybe they're making a connection with somebody on LinkedIn, they can let them know I'm a candidate in this program and you could try me before you buy me, is basically kind of some of our lingo we use. So I love it when that happens, and I'll be able to then have a company call with that, new organization, tell them all about the fellowship program. It is no cost to the host company to host any of our spouses. And so then I'm able to facilitate a fellowship, and then hopefully with that intent to hire at the end. And actually, just today, I got an email that there was a spouse who had met through her networking, met this new company that we were able to bring that on to, HOH, facilitated a fellowship, and she just got her follow-on offer today, and they're in the middle of salary negotiations. So it's just a tool to get your foot in the door somewhere.
For sure. I'm curious if you have any statistics on kind of the percentage of spouses that end up placed either in that organization or kind of relatively immediately into another organization as part of, the outcome of those fellowships.
Yeah. So the stats I can give you, so we've had over like 550 successful spouse fellowships or direct hires in 2023 alone, which were surpassing the numbers that we had, projected. Of that, I think we're sitting about 85% follow-on employment rate with that. But when I asked that question about the people who are candidates in the program and what is the statistics of them actually getting the fellowships and follow-on employment, it's impossible to offer that data because everybody's story is very individual and unique.
Sure.
So some people need to drop. Some people actually find a job outside of the program because we're teaching them resources all throughout. So that's a win too. And then others, a lot of them are PCSing. I've had a couple spouses who get last minute orders to Italy, which now fortunately they're able to potentially work there. It's still a lot of barriers to employment overseas. So everybody's story is really individual, and it's hard to get that type of data.
No, that makes sense. But I mean, 85% still is it's pretty darn high, even if it's not a full reflection of, every single outcome. It's still, that's a really fantastic metric regardless.
Yeah. And even after the end of the fellowship, we support them for the additional 3 months. So if they don't have follow-on employment at the end of a fellowship, for the next 3 months, we're going to be helping to connect them with other opportunities.
So if someone does go through the program and maybe that organization isn't the right fit or circumstances come up that, they need to go somewhere else, is there a mechanism for them to continue to be supported by the fellowship program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always say that every fellowship there is no guarantee to follow-on employment. We do have that language with the companies up front that it is intent to hire, but like you mentioned, anything can happen in the course of 3 months. Some companies we've witnessed lose headcount, anything can happen. So if a fellow is to end a fellowship and not have follow-on employment, we're going to support them for the next 3 months to really help connect them with different employment opportunities, float their resume to different people, and help them be successful, at the end.
How long has the spouse fellowship program been offered?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we are based off the transitioning service member, the corporate fellowship program, which they launched in 2014. It was successful, so we started our model in 2017. So it was
Okay.
one small little cohort in Maryland with a small group of spouses, and it was successful. And so exponentially, we've grown over the course of the past 5 years. And in 2023, we finally went nationwide, and we're serving all spouses in all 50 states. And that's largely due to the support and the Department of Defense's Military Spouse Career Accelerator pilot. So their funding and taking over the active duty spouses has allowed us to expand our program to help everybody.
No, that's fantastic. How does the application kind of process and timeline work if someone's interested?
Yeah, so there's no set deadline for applying. We actually offer info sessions. I think it's every other week. So, and when people register to get into that, they're going to get a video to learn more about the program, and then they can drop into an info session to get all their questions answered. But the application is ongoing. And so we do release those resumes on the second Tuesday of every month. So there is a deadline the week prior to have all those candidates ready to go for that 1 month. But if somebody applies and they miss that deadline, they're eligible for the following month. So it's an ongoing thing. We find that it takes time to place people. The employment process is long. We are not immune to that. I think any job seekers can relate to that. So we can release the resumes for 3 months in a row. And I have found that it takes that long. Not always. I wish I could hit the easy button for everybody, but sometimes they'll start interviewing and it literally takes 2 months to finally get that offer once they get through, all the different interviews or whatever needs to be done with that host company. So we support them all throughout that.
And so what are all of these virtual opportunities, or some of them, hybrid or in person? How does that work?
Yeah, so because of the pandemic, a couple of years ago, our remote work options were pretty high. So I think we were right around 85% of our fellowships were remote. We are seeing the trend of the return to office.
Mhm.
So we are now sitting at about 60% of our fellowships are remote.
Okay.
So one of the eligibility requirements for the fellowships is that they need to be open-minded to in-person, remote, or hybrid roles. So it limits the opportunity if you come in saying you only can do remote options, then we're not, unfortunately, at this point, not allowed to bring you into this program, this particular program, and we'll give you resources to help you find your virtual job that you're looking for.
Is there anything I didn't ask about the fellowship that you just want to make sure our audience is aware of?
Yeah, so with the fellowships, it really serves every industry, every job, anything that you could think of. So when I meet applicants, I ask them, about their background. I want to see their resume. I ask them about their dream job, so it's our job to look at their skill sets and their job that they're trying to get, and seeing how we compare them with different companies and their hiring needs. So there's no set fellowships that we have. That's a pretty common question that I'll get. Like, what are the fellowships you have this month? We don't have fellowships like that. What it is, we're trying to match the hiring needs with the skill sets of our candidates. So it's really open to whatever your background is and what your desires. So, and we really have everything. Our most common, there's a lot of human resources, talent acquisitions, IT, project program management, a lot of marketing communications, event coordinators, if you're a grant writer. I mean, all the things that we as military spouses, these are some of our superpowers that I like to call it. And a lot of companies now are seeing that they need to come to us for these superpowers, especially if you want to serve the military community. That is one of our strengths now, especially if you're separating, you're about to retire, transition, you've probably lived the military life for quite a while. So we know a lot about the military community. So if you serve a company or an organization that is directed towards that community, then that is a superpower you have.
No, we have lots of superpowers for sure. One other question I was just thinking about is whether or not kind of eligibility, my assumption, but I'll kind of validate this, is that it's kind of one per person, right? Like you go through the fellowship program, you're placed, in an organization, maybe you even get an offer and work in that organization for a time. And then as PCS happens, right, you move to another area and you're interested in integrating to that community and to the industries there, can someone sort of apply again in another area with, other companies, or is it really a kind of a one-time thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we hope that you only need a fellowship once, but we are here to support. So as a PCS comes and you move across country again and you're finding yourself unemployed, we do say it's a case by case basis, but we're going to be able to help again. We have other fellowship programs that you might also be eligible for that require different, whether a certificate or certifications that could also be a route. But ultimately, we're teaching the resources and offering the network for anybody, any spouse to be successful wherever they go. So it really is a case by case basis for more than one-time fellowships.
Okay. Nope. That makes perfect sense. And so if folks wanted to find information about the fellowship and apply and all of that, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
Yeah, so go to our website, so hiringourheroes.org. There's a whole bunch of, the step down menu, and you're going to find information on fellowships. We do have several different fellowship programs, and so most all of them are eligible for spouses. The only one that is not specific for spouses is the corporate fellowship, and that's for those transitioning service members.
Okay, good to know. All right, so we've covered fellowships, but I know there's a lot more to cover. So if you wouldn't mind kind of taking us through some of the other programs, having been you are a spouse, you've been through transition before, you kind of know what that looks and feels like for our audience. What are some of the other offerings under the HOH umbrella that you feel like is really worth folks taking a look at?
Yeah, well, if I can backtrack a little bit on fellowships, because
Yeah.
this kind of is in line with it. So there are other fellowship routes that I want to touch on that are eligible to spouses, but one of them is that Career Forward. So we have a Career Forward, which we call a learner to earner program. So all spouses, and this also is one of our only programs that veterans can take advantage of, and it's also eligible to transitioning service members. But so we can be learners and earn one of 7 different certificates through Google Coursera. So you can be a learner. There's program management, there's UX web design, digital marketing and e-commerce. There's 3 different ones in IT. There's data analytics. So any of us can earn that, put that on a resume, put it under professional development, and use that just to be more competitive on your resume. Or there is a follow-on fellowship opportunity. So there's a program manager that supports those finishers, the completers, to be placed using those new skills. One other fellowship that I want to make sure that spouses know they're eligible for is the Salesforce Fellowship. So if you're not familiar with Salesforce, it's a major client relationship management platform that many companies use, and it is a very well-liked
Mm-hmm.
platform, but it's very complicated. And so you need experts to help be those administrators and help be the ones to migrate the data over. So you can earn a certification to be that certified expert in Salesforce and then be placed in a company that uses Salesforce as their CRM. So that is also eligible for spouses. Same structure with that 12-week format.
I didn't realize just kind of how many different paths there are. It's so flexible. And I guess one question I would have is, as people think about kind of what this is going to look like, my guess is, as a spouse, I don't have to know exactly what that path needs to look like for me. I can kind of raise my hand and say, hiring our heroes, I'd like your help. I'd like to figure out what you have that would work for me. And so if I'm that person and I don't know where to start, what would you say is the best first place to go and
Yeah,
do?
that's a great question. So I would say go to Amplify. So Amplify is a 2-day workshop, intensive workshop only for military spouses. So it's a safe space. The team offers it once a month virtually, and then they are traveling around the country. And then even actually next year, they're going to be going to OCONUS positions as well. But so they do 2 days full of resume writing, interviewing skills, practicing your elevator pitch. They're going to give you a LinkedIn code so you have premium, and then they're going to walk you through how to actually create a LinkedIn profile that's professional, and then it's going to attract, potentially recruiters to look at you. And it's all in the safe space to be, kind of developing and exploring maybe what is next for you. You will also learn about all the different resources available to us spouses. So that I would say is the first step. All spouses should go to it. And actually, to give you some data, when I pulled some data last month, we had about a little over 500 spouses successfully go through the fellowships or direct hires. 250 of them had gone through Amplify.
Okay.
So there is a direct correlation between success in finding your job and going to Amplify. So I can't recommend that enough. One other really great free service to all of us is the Military Spouse Professional Network. So it's Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups. So it's really location specific. So whatever duty station you're assigned to, even overseas, there should be an MSPN chapter for you. There's also one that is virtual that includes, thousands of spouses that anybody is able to be a part of. So that brings, professional spouses, career-minded spouses all together. They'll do some professional development once a month, a lot of great networking. And then different companies are able to drop in jobs that they're hiring for. So once a week, our admins will drop in those jobs. So you are able to find jobs through those professional networks.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so again, if people are wanting to apply and get into one of those networks, they can go to our website and look up for the Military Spouse Professional Network, or we call it MSPN. There's a short little application. I'll ask you where you are so that then the administrators will be able to put you into the right group.
So we've talked about fellowships, we've talked about Amplify, that I know is just such a great offering for spouses. And I continue to find folks who, maybe didn't know or didn't think it was for them. And so hopefully this will help raise a little awareness about kind of who that's for, which it sounds like it's really for anyone who needs support at figuring out how to kind of get back in or get into the workforce. What other programs would you like us to kind of highlight today?
So the other support from Hire Heroes, we have career connectors. So the very first thing that if people were to apply to anything within Hire Heroes, they're going to first meet a career connector. They're going to go over their application and look at their resume, and then they're probably going to make some suggestions on their resumes. And then if they can't help, with one-on-one resume writing for that support that applicant needs, they're going to give some resources that are going to be really helpful so that they could sit down one-on-one with a resume writer or career coach. We know all those resources to refer them to. The other great thing the career connectors are doing are also helping with some direct hire opportunities. So once you've applied to our program, we have your resume in our system. A lot of our host companies, the sponsor companies will come to us, say, hey, I've got this hot fill job. I really want to get a military spouse in here. Do you have anybody with this skill set? And then they'll search, our database of our resumes, and they're going to start connecting, any of our spouses with those opportunities. So that's one thing with the career connectors. And then the other thing I want to say, we have tons of hiring events. So I really encourage everybody to be looking at our events page. I have to stay up, check it every so often because HOH continues to add more really great opportunities.
There's so many.
So many. So every other week, typically we have a hiring event. So that can be open to service members, veterans, military spouses, caregivers. And then every other month, I believe now we're having specific hiring events for spouses. So the great thing about that is all the employers that are attending those events are specifically looking for military spouses. So it's a safe space to go in. When you sign up and register for that, again, your resume that you've submitted with that application will be available to those employers. Every job seeker will then also get the list of the employers that are going to attend that event. And so you can do your research on the career page and make those connections with those employers at that event. So I really recommend doing that. And we also have professional development opportunities that are thrown on our events calendar. So the military spouse team will do, using, leveraging Indeed for your job search, or resume writing, LinkedIn, personal branding, all that stuff will spit into the professional development part and the events calendar.
Awesome. No, there is just so much that you all are able to offer. I hope, if nothing else, that folks just understand how kind of wide the services are and how much support there really is. And what I love about some of the things you've mentioned is it feels very personal. It feels very kind of high touch experience where I've got someone who has seen a lot of people walk this path before, and they can help me understand what my path might look like, and what are the steps I need to take, and not just leave it on me to kind of figure that out, but actually be a partner in that process. That's the thing I'm taking away, that I didn't really realize how much that was the case for you all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, your audience is transitioning, or they're thinking about transitioning, or they're just transitioned, right? So when we were in that military space, we had that sense of belonging. We had those roles, even though maybe they're frustrating at times. We were a military spouse, we were attached to some type of unit, and we had that sense of belonging. And now as you're venturing out to this whole new world on the other side, who are we? What is our identity? Are we still that military spouse? So that's what's so really neat about Hiring Our Heroes, is that we provide that sense of belonging. So even as, when you go to Amplify, you're going to feel connected to those spouses immediately because you're sharing each other's stories, and you're going to relate to some of those people in the audience. And then within our program, so our candidates, we bring everybody together at candidate prep day, and so they're meeting everybody and they're connecting on Slack. We have, ways to help them communicate, and they're realizing they're not alone. And then even then, once they're in the fellowship, every Friday we bring them together. And so it's that real sense of belonging and support, and realizing that you can do it, and you know what's next for you.
What I was just thinking about is, we sort of started off with your story. I would love for you to kind of bookend this conversation with a story of a spouse, if you're willing to, that went through the program, kind of how they came in and what that looked like for them on the other side, to just sort of paint a picture for what partnering with HOH could look like, but also in particular that fellowship program.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I'm like, which spouse do I want to tell you about? I mean, even, like the one that I mentioned earlier today. So her husband was going through the corporate fellowship and was transitioning out of the military. So she learned about the spouse program. She's like, well, let me try this out too. So both of them at the same time were transitioning into this new space. She brought the company to me. So she was also an educator, hoping to get into an instructional design. She ended up landing a role at an aviation company, and she's doing all the instructional design for their training and development for human resources. They love her, and they just, gave her that follow-on offer for employment today. Another spouse I'm thinking of, a veteran spouse that's they've, solidified their, planted roots in San Diego. And she also had a lot of volunteer work. She had added on different professional development, and she's a financial counselor. So she had done that a lot with the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society through volunteer work, and was trying to get back in that space where she could really be planting roots and having a paid profession. She had 3 different companies fighting after her. She was interviewing left and right. And so it was really just, I welcomed her into our network, and I started just making her introductions. And so she's about to start her fellowship next week with a really great offer. Already, she's got an offer to lose, essentially. They want her so badly.
That's incredible.
And, one other really great fun story, there is a spouse who was a veteran and a military spouse, did not realize all the superpowers that she had until, I made her do her resume, work on that, tweak it, and started introducing her to different people. And again, she had multiple offers and ended up accepting a direct hire opportunity. So sometimes it's just coming into, having somebody else look at what you have to bring to the table and helping you articulate it the right way, and feeling really confident what you have in paper and going forward, and then knowing that you're going to be able to land where you're supposed to land.
Yeah, no, it has got to be really fulfilling to, particularly as a military spouse, to now be in a position to help other military spouses kind of find their path and find their footing and start that, professional journey in a different way. So I love that you were able to kind of tell us a little bit about the work you're doing and the work that Hiring Our Heroes is doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. It's a great job. It's really fun to support military spouses and find their way. I think as a transitioning spouse, you're looking for your next identity. And I know I really struggled with that. Like, what was next for me? I had grown kids at that point, or growing, they're going off to college. Everybody was doing their own thing. So what was it for me? And it was so super important to me to have a career now at this point and be able to focus on that. So I offer that I think that many of us spouses are in that space at that transition, whether it's, like I said, at the 30-year mark. I'm working with a lot of spouses who have had, their spouse has been in many senior level positions. They are equally hungry for this information too, and the support. It is a transition for us, and Hiring Our Heroes is a resource that we should tap into. It is a safe space for spouses.
I love the focus on it being a safe space, because I think, to your point, perhaps particularly for folks who have been around a while, right? A lot of our audience is, career service member spouses. And so they may have done this life for 2, or to your point, 3 decades. And so it can be, I imagine, a little bit daunting to figure out, what is that first right step and what does that look like? And so to know that you don't have to have it all figured out, you just have to be willing to raise your hand and say, I need someone to help me and kind of, walk me through this process, but I'm willing to take the help and I'm willing to do the work. I think that's just an important thing for folks to hear. Like, it's never too late. I love that you highlighted some veteran spouse stories, because I think a lot of times I hear from veteran spouses where they feel like, once they cross that finish line, a lot of the support mechanisms kind of fall away for them. And so for you all to still continue to support them and continue to place them. So maybe you don't have it all figured out at transition, and maybe you do it a year after that, or as your service member gets settled and feels like they've got their footing, and then you decide to kind of figure out what's next for you, Hiring Our Heroes can help. So thank you again, Tracy, for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your story and the story of some of the folks that you all have been able to help. And we look forward to continuing to champion the efforts that Hiring Our Heroes has for all military spouses.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the With Pride and Grit podcast. We're so grateful to our guests for sharing their stories and expertise with us, and we're grateful to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe, and we always appreciate you sharing us with a friend or leaving a kind review. You can find us on social media under @PrideandGrit or on our website, prideandgrit.com. Until next time, please remember you're not alone on this journey, and it is our privilege to walk alongside you.